All right, Kevon, greetings and welcome back to this platform, TBH.
Blessings and blessings to the viewers.
All right, cool. So, this is what everybody has been talking about from Sunday night till present and will be discussed for a while. So, I saw you made a post about what happened at the Oscars between Will Smith, Chris Rock.
Two of my favorite comedians.
All right. So, I know everybody has an opinion. People have been posting, discussing, agreeing, disagreeing. And I saw a post that you made. And I'll share my thoughts on the post, but I'm always interested to have these conversations with you and for us to reason these things. So you can just share your thoughts on the whole thing and then we'll get into it.
No problem. So the essence of the post, I don't like to make very long Facebook posts, so I try to condense it, and I'll try to condense it here as well. The essence of it is that I think I don't agree with the notion of identifying Chris as wrong and Will as wrong. I think relative to their situation, they might both actually be right relative to why they did what they did. So let us start with Chris, since it all started with him. Chris is a comedian, and the nature of comedy, especially the type of comedy that he does, is to roast people, essentially. And oftentimes that roasting is very, very unkind. If I use these two examples. For years, there were jokes about Michael Jackson. And as we know, beyond Michael Jackson changing or altering his physical appearance, they made jokes about that. I think he had a health condition why he did it as well, if memory serves me well. But outside of that, there were also jokes about him being a pedophile, which is a very, very touchy topic. This has been going on for, I'm willing to say, decades. To this day, people still use Michael Jackson's situation in comedy. And then I also
that's
drew
like
on...
the I don't want to say gold standard, but that's like the example to use for...
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
So I probably don't even need to use Britney Spears then, but I did mention Britney Spears because she's probably still very contemporary. Her issues are still very contemporary. She struggles with, I believe, mental issues. And for years while she was going through it, she was the subject of comedy. And I don't think, I was probably pretty young, but I don't think I've come across these attacks on those jokes, or at least they weren't on this level. So in that sense, I don't think
that last point.
I don't think comedians, when they were using Michael Jackson, Britney Spears, the way they were, at least compared to what happened between
Will and
Chris and, well, I'm gonna say Chris and Jada because the joke was between.
Sure.
Yeah, between both. I don't think comedians back then came under as much fire as Chris has come under for this joke. And I think it's because back then everybody understood that this is the nature of comedy, especially stand-up comedy. And I don't think it has been a secret that this is the kind of comedy that Chris excels at. So that's why I don't think Chris did anything wrong in that sense. Whether or not we think the joke is appropriate, I believe has always rested with the person the joke is about and the person who gave the joke. Then the issue with why Will hit him. I did say in the post, putting aside the fact that Will laughed initially. So putting aside that.
You'll discuss that, but go ahead.
Yeah, we can discuss that as well. But what I did say in the post, he hit him. Do I think I use the term justifiable? I think Will hitting him is justifiable in the sense that in as much as what I just said, Whether or not the joke is appropriate rests with the person the joke is about and the person who made the joke. Will gets brought into the picture because he is the wife, the husband of the person that the joke is about. And so in that sense, I think it is justifiable that he would hit Chris. But the action being justifiable is not the same as saying that it is not punishable. So there are things that we can justify. In fact, by nature, things that are oftentimes labeled as justifiable tend to be things that are objectively or generally seen as incorrect acts. For example, murder is universally identified as something we shouldn't do. But an act of killing or murder, I'm going to use the words murder and killing synonymously.
Can we though?
All right, so we're in, to be honest, so let us not. So yeah, murder and killing are not the same. So let me use killing.
Okay.
Killing is the word that I should actually use. So killing is normatively seen as wrong. But certain acts of killing are justifiable. The easiest one that comes to mind is self-defense. So what happens is you kill a person, you go to court, and you argue the case of self-defense. And so while the court sees killing as wrong, they see killing in self-defense as justifiable. And I'm no lawyer, I'm no judge, but I imagine that one of two things happens. Either you get a lesser sentence compared to manslaughter or murder, or you get off completely on self-defense. And so that was my argument with why it was okay for Will to have smacked Chris.
Okay, so before I get to the actual incident, I'll push back, because if something is justifiable, I don't think it then can be punishable. So I don't think there's a situation where it will be self-defense and you are punished. I don't, and I'm no lawyer myself, but I don't know that to be the case. So for me, to say something is justifiable means that it shouldn't come with any punishment. That's my
and that is fair, which is what my argument is. I don't think not punishable and justifiable are synonymous or work hand in hand. They can occur together, but they are not identical. And
I think they are.
So let me give an example. So okay. I remembered once, well, we both went to NCO. I remembered it was a research week. And I think the individual who gave a presentation was a senior superintendent of police. And he mentioned to the gym at the time that you can actually be arrested and charged and jailed or imprisoned, for doing something that actually was self-defense. And he explained the circumstances under which that could happen. He said, let's say, for instance, somebody is attacking you or breaking in. The person is physically attacking you, you feel you're in danger, and you have a weapon. And let us say the person recognizes that you have a weapon, turns their back to run away, you shoot them and they happen to die. He said, of course, there's a difference between the judge and the police. The police's job is to arrest, make the case, and the judge is the one who determines whether or not to mete out the punishment. But he said in a situation like that, you could actually be charged for manslaughter, even though technically you are attempting to defend yourself and your possession. And he said the reason is the circumstances of the situation is that the individual has opted not to continue with their action. And they determine that by the fact that their back is turned to you. And they assume that this individual is fleeing. They are saying in that sense, you should not have discharged your weapon, and so manslaughter. So of course, as you said, we are both not judges and lawyers. So
yeah. The question, and we won't prolong it, the question is, well then, is that actually self-defense at that point? But we won't go down
I think it is. I'm curious though, what you think. We don't have to go about it, but I'm curious what you think.
I feel if, say, somebody breaks into my house, sees that I have a gun, and proceeds to run back out, and then I go and shoot them, I'm not sure, I'm not convinced I can call that self-defense at that point.
And that's fair.
But I'm not sure. I don't know what, but I'm not convinced that's self-defense. But back to the Will and Jada and Chris Rock situation. I disagree with the premise that Will is justified for a few reasons. So let me share my 4 thoughts on it. One, context is everything, right? So I guess you can say the social agreement of the Oscars, Grammys, NBA awards, NFL awards is hosts, presenters, they go and they roast the person. So it keeps it light, it's a lot of tension, so it keeps it light, and so roasting is common practice, right? So it's not just about Chris Rock and his style of comedy, but the context is these people are gonna come, they're gonna shoot blows. To me, there's a difference between roasting and just plain disrespect, right? So I'm not talking about a man and his wife walking down the street and then some guy disrespects their wife. So the context matters. Now, it doesn't mean you need to find the joke funny. It doesn't mean you need to appreciate the joke. But for me, if you don't find the joke funny, don't laugh, right? And if it's so bad that you need to speak to the person, outside and say, "Yo, listen, I didn't appreciate that. Hash it out, whatever." Fine. I don't think it's acceptable because you didn't like the joke to walk onto the stage and slap the person who gave the joke. Now, going into more detail, the joke could not, first of all, the actual joke matters, right? Because I know, there's the narrative that, it's up to the person who the joke is on, and that's fair. But you can objectively look at a joke and say, no, that was just way over the line, or that's a little mild. And to compare her to G.I. Jane, in my humble opinion, is not just grave disrespect. Evidence that it's not grave disrespect is Will Smith was laughing, right? That is significant, right? Yeah. Not only was Will Smith laughing, nobody's discussing this. Lupita was in the background and she laughed as well, right? So all this talk about
basically everybody was laughing except Jada. Yeah.
So all this talk about, like, I think it's like hindsight, kind of self-righteous type of like, oh no, Chris was wrong. Because the thing is, if the joke was that bad, if Will didn't do what he did, it would have still made news, like Chris Rock, and I don't think, I mentioned this under your post, that if Will did not do what he did, first thing, nobody don't really watch Oscars again. So nobody would have heard the joke.
Guilty.
And the few people that were watching, and by few, people were watching, but as related to like who knows the joke, no, very small. And those who were in attendance, they would have forgot the joke like 2 minutes later, because it wasn't that big of a deal. So that being said, I don't think the joke was all that bad. And this is probably going to be an unpopular opinion, and a lot of people may disagree. I'm not convinced that Jada was like all that upset. I know that the reaction was like her rolling her eyes, and I'm no body language expert and whatever, but normally when people don't like the joke, they just stonewall the person and they don't laugh. Yeah. I feel like it's like, here we go again type of thing, and just like giving him visible attitude. But Will took it upon himself, and if we could rewind the clock and ask Jada if she wanted him to do that, I'm not convinced she would have wanted him to do that, right? So here's what I will say though. though I won't say it's justified, I think there are reasons. And I'm no psychologist, but what I've learned hearing people discuss it was Will Smith wrote a book like a few months ago, and in the book, in the first line of the book, he said like his whole career he felt like a coward, and the reason why was that he witnessed his father physically abuse his mother, and he didn't stand up to him, right? And he said that haunted him his whole career. So I don't know if it's in that moment when he saw Jada's reaction that got triggered and he's like, yo, I can't suffer in 40 years like this. So I'm gonna go stand up for the woman of my life. And so there are always things going on and you don't know what's going on in a man's head or a person's head. And so I'm not saying to cancel him. I'm not saying he's a bad person. I'm not saying all of that. So there's always grace. I feel like there should be grace and whatever. But I will say he was wrong in it. I don't think he was justified. And I think it was a grave overreaction. That's my view.
I agree wholeheartedly with the logic. I can't say you said anything that I don't think is logical. Because admittedly, I did say it when I made the post that I'm putting aside the fact that he laughed. Mm-hmm. The truth is, I did think about the entire thing the way you thought about it as well. And I think what happened has a lot to do with a whole heap of context, as you said. I wouldn't say that they have beef. I wouldn't say that they have beef going back to the Oscar when Jada boycotted. I don't see evidence that there was any hard feelings coming from all of it. People want to make it out to be that. I don't think that applies. But certainly though, there is undoubtedly a lot of very subjectivity in that triangle between Chris, Jada, and Will. I agree that Will didn't hit Rock because he felt the joke was bad. I could be wrong. Maybe he was laughing out of politeness. It's possible. Yeah, I mean, people do that. People laugh at jokes out of politeness because they don't want to be the odd one out. I mean, clearly, every time a joke is made about a person, the camera goes on to the person. Yeah. So maybe Will is saying, the camera's going to be on me, so laugh. I don't know. It's possible. I don't know. The fact is he laughed. And so I do agree that based on what we see, I don't think he hit him because he felt the joke was inappropriate. I think he hit him because he felt that his wife found it inappropriate. Yes. And as you said, there's stuff happening in his life from his past and stuff happening between him and her right now.
Absolutely.
And he felt like, all right, I need to do something about this.
Yes.
I do agree as well that that was not the place to do something about it. I do agree, especially who he is, Will Smith, the Will Smith that we know in the public. I do agree that it was well within his power to be more, what's the word? I'm trying to find the word restraint in, but I didn't start the sentence properly. Okay. I teach math. I'm trying to be better at speaking. He could have exercised more restraint. Okay. Considering the type of person we know him to be, I do think that he could find it within his power to exercise some more restraint. But this is why I try to divorce all of that subjective stuff in my post. Because I think, and I think you probably recognize it as well, is that when stuff like this happens, I look at all of this as a life lesson. There are individuals who will be seeing this and they will take, what's the word I'm looking for? The Christian coming out of me. Yes, to be honest, I don't need to hide it. Here a little, there a little. But they just take the here a little. Okay. No, there a little. Okay. And so they take this aspect of it and they take that as a life lesson for themselves, divorcing the entire situation And so they come up with conclusions about one Black people, which has already begun to happen. We've already begun to see people making the issue about Black people, and I don't understand why. The only reason they've come to that conclusion is because it happened between 3 Black people in the context of this Black Lives Matter and all this whole racial issues. And as far as they could see, all they saw was 2 Black men fighting on stage and their white people looking. And I don't think that was the context. I think it's wrong. On top of that, they're seeing a married man who has a wife who feels bad about something. And so damned if he does something about it, damned if he don't. And I also think that that is not the full context either, which is why I think I attempted in the post I think my intention in divorcing the fact that he laughed was to try to have a conversation with those who all they saw was whether or not it was right to what they call engage in an act of violence. And so those persons saw nothing about the joke. I don't think they're thinking anything about the joke, whether or not it was a good joke. There are those who are talking about whether or not it was a good joke. And that's why I started by saying, I think in the context of stand-up comedy, it was a well-developed joke. Whether or not we think it was appropriate is up to us. But it doesn't mean that Chris didn't do well as a comedian to design a joke. If I could take, for example, an article that I think it was Blacker Ellis, who's a Jamaican comedian, commenting on it. He literally said to each his own. He said that's just not the kind of joke that he as a comedian would use. He says that when he's doing stand-up comedy, he doesn't laugh at his audiences. But he's clear in saying that it is actually an existing form of stand-up comedy and to each his own. So he doesn't say that Chris is wrong for doing it. He simply says, me, Blacker Ellis, as a comedian, don't do stuff like that. And for those who are just looking at the joke by itself, ignoring everything else, the joke was perfectly designed, wonderfully developed, I think relatively fairly executed. And you could see that he could tell that at least the person he was roasting or making the joke about didn't find it funny. And I think that's why he said, come on, that's a good one.
Right.
Clearly, everybody else was laughing. He, as the comedian, recognized, all right, maybe I might have crossed the line. How do I play it off? So, come on, it's a good one. That's what I saw. At the very least, the comedian recognized what I thought really matters, whether or not the person giving the joke felt it was appropriate and the person on the receiving end felt it is appropriate. I think he recognized that very well. And that's why he made that comment. So that's for those who only want to talk about those. Why I felt, and I can agree with you why you think Will wasn't justified. Why I felt that he was justified was because there were others who were focusing only on the fact that he's a married man, his wife was roasted, she didn't appreciate it, he needed to do something. My comment was simply intending to show 2 things. One, when you are involved in this situation, how you respond is very subjective. Blanketly, objectively, I think it is always better for every, I'm going to say male or female, in a relationship who feels they need to defend their partner. I think objectively, it is always better not to react physically. I think that is objectively the case. If I could take myself personally, I try to be that way. I might not be the best at it, but I try to do it that way. In fact, people might probably call me a sophos because oftentimes people say harsh things to other people, to my wife, to me, and I oftentimes laugh it off. But the truth is, inside, I want to slap them and slap them properly. And the truth is, I feel like if I did slap them, I would have been justified. But I do agree to be taken, and I should always attempt to take that role. What am I simply saying? And I think it sounds a bit confusing. I'm simply saying that where the harm that has been done doesn't amount to, I don't think it amounts to violence. Let me say that. People call it violence, an act of violence. I don't think it does. I'm actually one of those persons, and a teacher at that, who does not think that corporal punishment is something as bad as people make it out to be. Because there's a difference between corporal punishment and abuse. And the problem we're having is that people are divorcing context and subjectivity from these things that are by nature subjective. Everything that has to do with human interaction is subjective. And the rest of us looking on are merely looking from quote unquote an objective point of view. But we were never actually in that position. Somebody said to me once that oftentimes adults in the church are easy to say to you, you must control your child. Why is a child walking up and down in the church? Why are they making noise? They must sit and listen to the sermon. And many times persons who say stuff like that tend to be people who don't have children of their own. And then later on, the tables are turned, and lo and behold, sometimes these are the same people who walk to church with a book to give their child or their children, give them pen and paper, and encourage them not to listen to the sermon, and write something to keep them occupied so that they don't do the very same thing that they were attacking others for being guilty of allowing happening. The reality is that a lot of these things are subjective, and until we are in the situation, we really and truly don't know how we would respond. In Will's case, he's in a quagmire, to be honest. I don't want to talk about him and Jada's life. I don't like to talk about people's life that way. But the truth is their relationship is probably one of the most complicated ones I've ever seen. And I don't want to say my opinion of the relationship, but the truth is that man is under some serious pressure, Dale. Listeners, that man is under some serious pressure. I agree him shouldn't slap the man, but I understand why he did it. He laughed first. He shouldn't have laughed if he thought the joke was bad. I think he found it to be a good joke. I think he did.
I agree.
I think the problem is his relationship with Jada. That's what the problem is. And the fact that the listeners here continue to publicly seek out information about the man and the woman's relationship, continue to help publicize it, I should say, because it's not really the onlookers really publicizing it to that, but continue to help to publicize it, continue to comment on what they should do, what they shouldn't do. The man is in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. I understand why he slapped him. Thinking about everything, I don't think he should have, because he laughed. And I think he's better at that. But he did. And I understand why. I don't see it as an act of violence. I don't see it as Black people not being great people. I don't think of it as a Black, brilliant, successful actor letting down the entire Black race. I don't see it as a man who let down his wife, even though I do agree, probably Jada wouldn't have wanted him to hit him. Yeah, let me not say probably. I don't think she wanted it to hit him. Yeah, I don't think, right? But I do think that later on, probably a red table would come up where she was saying, how could we laugh? I do think that was probably gonna happen, right? I do think at the very least, she would think that her husband should recognize that I probably feel touchy about the situation and he shouldn't laugh or he should do something about it. A slap, I don't think she think that, but he did slap him. I understand it. I'm actually going to, and I don't know if this happens a lot. I watch oh I'm in public, by the way.
The same one, like
Right.
turn.
And you know him too, but this is internet, so I'm not going to load him up.
All right, cool.
But I lost my train of thought. What was I saying again? I don't think it had to do with Will and Jada. I don't think she wanted him to slap him. I think she would have wanted some amount of response from her husband in whatever form it was, whether it was private or public, whatever it is. Oh yes, I don't know if this happens a lot, but I use the term justifiable. I'm still leaning to the term justifiable, but I am leaning more to how you explained it. Understandable. I could understand why he hit him, which is different from justifiable. Justifiable, as you said, may suggest that there should be no punishment, or, well, I think punishment can come with justifiable incorrect acts. I didn't say that right. Acts that are objectively seen as incorrect, but justifiable. I do think it's possible that those acts can also go with punishment. But yeah, I think I'm leaning to how you expressed it. I think the word understandable might be the better way. I can understand why he did it, but I do agree that he could have done better.
Okay, so here's where I agree with you. I agree that you never know what a person is going through. I don't know what I would do if I had a wife and she had entanglements and this and that. So I agree with you there. I wouldn't describe my position as saying that it was understandable, but I think I can understand like the reasons why. Right. What I think I disagree with is I do not think it was a damned if you do, damned if you don't. I believe that I don't think it was as big of a deal to any of the parties involved as people are making it look. It's in hindsight, we're looking at it and we're saying, yo, like, whatever.
Question though.
Sure.
When you say you don't think it was a big of a deal, you mean persons at the Oscars or society in general?
Everybody. I don't think the joke was as big of a deal to society. Like if the slap didn't happen to the persons at the Oscars, to Will, to Jada, I think that it's something Jada suffers with, and it's a slight annoyance, and just like, here we go again. But I don't know these people, I could be wrong, but I don't think it's something that Jada would have been thinking about weeks after, like, or the next week. I don't think it was that. So I believe, and here's the thing, because people are talking about, you can't joke about person's physical appearance and this and that, whatever. People have been making bald jokes for men for forever.
Forever, yeah, it's still happening.
Forever, people have been making bald jokes for men, and it's just no big deal. Here's another thing. Amy Schumer, she was hosting. She's one of the hosts. She made a joke about Jennifer Lawrence, who was in the movie Don't Look Up, right? And she made a joke about her gaining some weight. The joke was about her gaining some weight, right? Now,
I can see where this is going.
If Jennifer Lawrence went up and slapped Amy about that, there'd be this whole talk about, you can't make fun about person's weight, that's not whatever. But people just laughed and they moved on nobody even knows about the joke, and there's no uproar, right? So what I have a problem with is, see, if the joke is inappropriate, then with no drama, it should be talked about and it should be news and whatever, because it'd be like, no, the joke is so bad. I think all the blowback is just in defense of what Will did. And I really don't think that the joke was that significant. Now, I'm not the person in the situation, so this is just my humble opinion. Maybe it would have haunted her for Jada. It would have haunted her for a year. I don't know. But that's just my opinion on looking. The other thing is, if it was not Chris Rock and it was The Rock that gave the joke, I don't think Will Smith would have gone up there to do anything. So it's just as a side note.
I've gotten a clothesline.
It's significant to me. It's significant to me that he did it to somebody who he felt he could get away with it. I take it a step further. My humble opinion. If it was Jim Carrey, I don't think he would have gone up there and slapped him. I don't believe it. So it's just interesting that it was Chris Rock and he felt emboldened enough to do it. I have a question. I don't know if you want to respond to anything I said.
More to agree, because everything you mentioned there also points back to the subjective stuff. Okay. Because I think we do it every day in life. How we respond to people depends on who they are. Yeah. Oftentimes. I mean, if we take what happened with the bunch of people who made videos about the Prime Minister and Joelness, and behind the camera, them big and bad, and then the moment them realize, oh, I got caught. Humble apologies coming from people who look like gangsters, and ain't no apology coming. So yeah, we do it all the time. I agree. The relationship between Chris and Will probably also contributed to why he felt that he could get away with slapping him. Yeah, I agree with you.
Do you think that what he did should have affected him remaining in the ceremony, getting the Oscar? Because I, in one sense, I believe he still should have gotten the Oscar, because the Oscar is for work that he's done, and the work was already done. So if he's scheduled to get it, I believe he should have gotten it. There is something to say though about accountability and holding people accountable, because you can't have people just stopping hosts or whatever. Yeah, you can't have that. But so there's a conversation about that, but I feel he should have still gotten it. Persons are saying, I agree, he should probably be like banned for the next year. He can't be like nominated for anything. Do you think so you said you agree about him getting it. Do you think that there should be any punishment for him as it relates to the Oscars? And do you think that he should have been allowed? Do you think security should have been involved in any way, like escorting him, anything of that nature?
I think the question and what should be done is very similar to the situation Will was in and what should be done. So to say that there should be some punishment is to say that, all right, this thing is something that we can't let slide. It's a big deal, we must do something. In the context of it, I would agree that it doesn't warrant security needing to remove him, because it died there with the slap and the expletives. But at the same time, I could understand why the security would be asked to remove him. Because as you said, there's a time and a place for everything. And the Oscars isn't the place for them to handle whatever disagreements arise out of whatever happened. And so I think we could equally argue that if the Oscars punished him, whether in the day by removing him or later on banning him, then it's a similar situation. They're much like Will. they are giving credence and giving importance to something that I think you and I agree didn't need to get to where it was. But at the same time, they probably have their code of ethics. They probably have their rules. And I'm guessing that there is some requirement having to do with how persons attending the Oscars interact with each other. And so naturally, because those rules exist, I actually think that they must do something and respond in that sense. Because if there's documented procedures for how to handle something like that, then whether or not it's something that they don't want to continue to be in the news cycle and make more important than it is, I think they are required to respond if they have something in writing that dictates that they need to do so. So in that sense, yes. What the punishment is, however, is always dependent on the persons involved. And in this case, the academy would have to be the ones, based on their code of ethics, to determine what punishments need to be meted out to who. And I want to say who because I might be getting myself in trouble again. For argument's sake, let's say I don't think it exists, but for argument's sake, let's say that there is some code of ethics that suggests that Chris's joke was inappropriate. Then in that sense, even though we both agree that there's nothing wrong with the joke, because they have documented rules about it, then they would have to punish Chris. And because they would have had documented rules about what Will did, then they also have to punish Will. Does that mean that they must now punish? The fact that they punish Chris means that there it is, the joke is inappropriate. We must all now agree that it was inappropriate. No, because ethics is different from morality. Ethics is relative to the situation, in this case, the academy. What is right and wrong depends on what the academy says is right and wrong, which is not the same as saying that this is right and wrong absolutely, objectively. And so in that sense, if they do have rules that show that the joke was inappropriate, then they'd have to punish Chris. If they have rules that said or there are no ethical codes that say it was wrong, leave him alone. If they have rules on paper that says what Chris did is punishable, punish him. If they have no rules there that says that he should be punishable, I don't care if Barack Obama or Joe Biden or Donald Trump says, no, we need to do something about this. They should leave the man alone and just leave it there. That's my take on it. So I don't think that they should or shouldn't. I think the academy needs to check their rules. If it's there, do it. If it's not, leave it alone.
Yeah, I think so. I'll say, like, in a vacuum, I think Will Smith or person A who goes on stage and stops person B should be escorted out. However, in reality, I have no problem with them not doing it, because we can be self-righteous and be like, yo, they should have, whatever. But I understand this is a business, right? Will Smith is scheduled to get an Oscar. It's Will Smith. So I understand them being like, yo, no, stand down. Stand like, yo, just let it go. And as you said, if the conversation ended there, it didn't go further. So like, you can't have people just going up and stopping persons. Like, security should roll them out. But I understand that, listen, we're on a level, like, fairness. This is Will Smith. You're gonna let him say. I understand that. I do believe that there has to be something done moving forward.
But to say though, Dale, I don't think it has to do with who it was. At least my point doesn't have anything to do with who he was and the award he was going to get afterwards. My point has everything to do with the fact that it died right there. He slapped him, he threw his 2 expletives, and it died there for them. Now, if it seemed like it didn't die there, they need to do something. The security needs to come in. Because usually what happens at shows like those, well, at least from what I've seen, there is an assessment of level of threat.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming that the security there would have assessed the level of threat and felt that it did not warrant them having to physically restrain anybody. I think that's what happened.
I
more than
follow you.
anything else.
I follow you. Let's paint a hypothetical. Kanye West is in attendance. Tiffany Haddish is presenting. Kanye West goes up. Say she makes a Kanye West joke about Kim and whoever else, right? And Kanye West
a woman.
Goes up there and slaps her and goes back down. And there, it doesn't seem to escalate.
That wouldn't end well.
I don't see it just ending there. So I understand your point. I get your point. I do believe who is involved factored in.
Okay.
I think that's a factor. I feel like if it was a different situation with different persons, possibly different genders, it could have gone.
I was just about to say that because the difference of genders is a whole nother level of subjectivity, which I think is what I've been saying. A lot of this is subjective. And I think that's why I'm careful to say or to be definitive about what I think should happen. And I'm more like, because of this context, I can see why this is justifiable, why this is understandable, why this should happen, why that should. Because there's a lot of subjective. If a male went up there and slapped him, I'm pretty sure, and I agree with you, a male slapped a female, security would have gotten there.
But not just that though, in my opinion, even if it was, say, let me think of say Kanye West slapped Jimmy Fallon. I think security would have probably, I feel like who the aggressor was.
Yeah, but Jimmy Fallon would be considered white, so that's still a white versus black.
So all I'm saying is the who, I feel like factors in. I agree. It might not be the end all, but I feel like it does factor. But anyway, man, interesting. I had one more question. Oh gosh, I hope it comes to me. It's slipping me. What was the question? I had one more.
It's slipping you.
It's slipping me. Oh my gosh, it's my last one too. What I will say though is I feel like Chris Rock can be a huge winner in this. Because I don't know if you know this, he's just about to start a comedy tour.
Yeah, I heard, and ticket sales skyrocketed. If I were Chris Rock, I would keep the silence. I wouldn't comment at all because I'm profiting from it. If I open my mouth, something might go wrong.
Okay.
But yeah, I think he is profiting from it as well.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, but yeah, man, it's in summary, I want to say one, we're all human beings, and so though I feel Will was in the wrong, I feel like there should always be grace because, as you say, you never really know what somebody's going through. Two, I don't think because you don't know what someone's going through means you can't say, okay, but this is wrong, right? So I think you can still point out what's acceptable and what's unacceptable. Yeah, Jada is suffering as we didn't really go into it, but she's suffering from alopecia. I've seen where she's like, cause she has her own platform or whatever, and she spoke about like, all I can do is laugh about it now. So I mean,
so there's evidence that she may not be suffering as badly as, or it could be fair.
Not even that she's not suffering as badly, but I feel like she's trying to approach it with the right attitude. And I feel like the right attitude is, I feel like joking about stuff, if done tastefully, because there is a way to do it distastefully, but I feel like if done tastefully can really be healing. You know, if we can like laugh about things and allow others to laugh about things, and I feel like that's something we should And as hard as it may be, I feel like if you try to keep your cool in situations. Now, if it's a case where like Will Smith spoke to Chris Rock about it, and then Chris Rock continues, then that's something totally
Yeah,
different.
that's different. I just got that image in my head, but it's not for airplane. If that were supposed to actually happen, and he kept doing it.
Yeah. But yeah, man, I mean, just a learning experience for all involved and for all onlookers. You know,
I don't know if you could allow me, but I would hope, and I think we spoke about this, my personal mission as a human. It grieves me to see how people play a part in ruining people's lives. You know what I mean? Like, I think you said it best. Why are we still talking about this? Why are we still, I don't mean the TBH. I think the TBH talk is great, because at least this conversation is a genuine talk about the issue and how do we as individuals learn from this. But I think a lot of what is prevailing, as you said, why is it such a big deal, is because there are individuals just capitalizing on this for the wrong reasons. It's their job, but I believe news outlets are doing it because this is going to get a lot of viewership. I think even comedians are capitalizing on it because I watched one and I laughed. I laughed. I think it was Jimmy Fallon as well. I laughed. But they're capitalizing on it. So, in other words, individuals, if we're going to talk about this stuff, let us talk about it constructively. I think we can move beyond limiting and belittling things like these that happen in real life to mere racial issues, to mere issues of gender, to mere issues of personal feelings about people we may like or dislike. I think objectively, the issue is really about whether or not the joke is appropriate. And I think if we look objectively, there was nothing wrong from a comedian's perspective with the joke. There's nothing wrong from his perspective with the joke. And so the life lesson from me is, I need to learn to recognize that how I respond in situations should be the bigger person. I think on all aspects of it, that's what it boiled down to. I may not like the joke. So as you rightly said, then don't laugh. Don't laugh. But it doesn't mean the person becomes this evil Grinch. It doesn't mean that. And if the individual responds in a way that we don't think is ideal, it doesn't mean that this person is the evil Grinch either. But what it does mean for me as Kevonn is that I need to learn that this thing can happen to me. Check myself. How am I going to respond? And how do I treat the people who are in the situation? That's really the takeaway for me. Okay. And I hope others got it as well.
I remember the question now.
Oh, go ahead, man.
So, Will Smith, should he apologize? I know he apologized to everybody except Chris Rock. And then later on his IG, he wrote something. Is that enough? Should he reach out? In your opinion, how do
I think whether or not he reaches out is not my business.
Okay.
Honestly, I don't think that's my business. It's up to them. There are squabbles that we all as individuals know whether or not this is reconcilable, whether or not it's worth going. I mean, look at what happened to Kirk Franklin.
What happened to Kirk?
With Kirk, the situation with him and his son and this constant reaching out. Look at what happened. And now his personal reaching out is now in the open, and something that should die with him and his son and their mediator is now this big deal, and the man turned out to be this. People are saying he's not a real Christian. All that I don't know. So whether or not Chris and Will should talk about it one-on-one, it's up to them. What I do think is, yes, he should have apologized to him. I don't care about when it happened. I don't care about when it happened. Objectively, I think he should have apologized then and there at the Oscars. Clearly, he was probably still in the feelings and didn't feel up to it. But should he apologize? Yes. Did he apologize? Yes. Whether or not it's an acceptable apology is up to Chris, not me. And me as an IG user, me as a Twitter user, me as a Facebook user, don't need to jump on now and say, what kind of apology is this? Why did you take so long? It's not my business. You want an apology as an IG user, Facebook user, an Instagram user, person at the Oscars, you got an apology. Whether or not you think it's genuine, leave the people's business alone. And learn that if you find yourself in the situation, apologize.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. I just want to big up. It's not like they're going to see this, but I just want to big up Questlove because he won an Oscar. People not talk about that. Shaq and Steph Curry won Oscars.
Really? I need to watch. I need to go and watch the Oscar.
I didn't watch it.
Is it on YouTube?
It's on, what platform did I see it on? It's on like ABC or one of those platforms. It's available. But yeah, I heard it that it was announced that Questlove got an Oscar, Shaq and Steph Curry got Oscars. So just want to big up those achievements, yeah. Yeah, man. And I appreciate you taking the time to come on and discuss this with me.
Anytime, man. This is my favorite podcast. and that's a serious thing, you know, because I'm not a podcast person.
Yeah?
Yeah, I know. My wife is in the background grinning. I'm not a podcast person. But trust me, this is the one that I will see a topic. I'm like, I want to watch this one. So yeah, this is my favorite podcast.
We appreciate that. We appreciate that. And people appreciate you being on it. So thanks again, Kevonn.
Anytime, man.
Gentle people, blessings, peace and love, no violence. And that's absolutely called for. Unless they're turning and running away.